we're recording. Hi, just wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We are from the Behavior Place, and we're here to talk to you guys about some questions and answers that we got from our seminar that Tara, the president of the Behavior Place, did a few weeks ago that was called Just Take a Bite. So we're here to answer some questions for you about some picky eating. So we have with us Tara Montemuro, who is the president of the Behavior Place and also a licensed behavior analyst, and I am Danielle Ingracia. I'm also a licensed behavior analyst, and we have Brooke and Jessica here with us as well, and they are our registered behavior technicians that work with some of our kiddos. So we're going to just present some questions to you guys and hopefully answer them for you. Right, Brooke?
We are going to jump in on tips for starting your feeding routine with your child, things you can do to set yourself up for success. One of the things that we suggest is restricting snacks throughout the day and restricting liquids. If you are going to have snacks throughout the day, you don't want them full before a mealtime, so make sure they're not eating anything about 15 to 20 minutes before you're going to have a mealtime with your child. And on the same note, restricting liquids, things like milk and juice shouldn't be, they shouldn't be drinking during meal times if they're just going to fill up on it. Having water throughout the day, or again, 15 to 20 minutes before a meal. One of the questions we got was, how do I get my toddler to want to eat? And getting your toddler to want to eat is, they're going to have to be hungry. And if they're eating snacks all day and if they're drinking a lot of milk all day, they're not going to be hungry and they're not going to be motivated for meal times. Let's see, another one of the questions we got was, how can I get my child to actually eat food when it's in front of her at meal times? Another important way to set yourself up for success when you're creating a feeding routine with your kid is to have a consistent schedule for your meal times, a consistent time of the day, and also a consistent duration, and really sticking with it. With the consistent schedule and the restricted snacks and liquids, your child's going to be hungry when you're presenting food. They're going to be motivated to eat the food at the mealtime that you want them to eat it at. Another question we got was, why do I need to collect data? If you were at the previous seminar that Tara did here in Goshen, you heard her talk about the food log. This is an example of a food diary. It can be as simple as just, this one has the date of what day, the start and end time, the foods eaten, and what they drank. It can be as simple as this, or you can get into more of the textures so that later you can see maybe the patterns of things that they do and don't like. When you collect data on your child and what they're eating, a lot of times with feeding, progress can be really slow. And so when you have data and you're consistently taking it, you can see the progress that maybe you wouldn't have recognized day to day. So like maybe you're taking data consistently and you've been having your dinner every day at 5 p.m., except Friday. On Friday, you're busy, you don't eat till 7, and on that day, your child is agitated and they don't eat anything. And you look back at later and you realize that, oh, it was my schedule was inconsistent. We weren't modeling all the food together. They ate by themselves, and you'll recognize that by looking at your food diary. Another question we got was, why use toys or anything other than social praise to reward a child for eating? Many children who are picky eaters, food is not going to be reinforcing, meaning it's not like a preferred item for them. It's not going to increase their future frequency of eating anything. So using toys or maybe their favorite YouTube video, a lot of kids like those, can be more reinforcing as opposed to maybe a food item, even if it's dessert, even though dessert is reinforcing for many kids. So giving them a first then statement, like first you take a bite of your carrot and then you get to watch your favorite YouTube video, can be really successful for you. So the next question we got was about eating new foods and vegetables, and Jessica is going to cover that now.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the food game. This is what it looks like. It's a food game board. It has multiple different steps for you to help introduce new food items to your child. And I just want to backtrack for a second and say that that I want to mention that you want to stay consistent with your kids. And this goes back to the limiting the snack items and liquids so your child is more willing to try new items. You want to just keep introducing the items and be consistent with them. And as research has shown, kids usually do well on a routine or schedule. So keeping those schedules consistent is key. You can use this food game again to make it fun to introduce new food items for your child. So you want to make this as fun for your child as you can. And so it doesn't turn into a chore or an aversive thing for them. And it's like something that they might like look forward to. So you want to use baby steps. And when your child gets to the step that you're working on, so let's say you're working on just touching a food item. There's like one step prior to that by just looking at your food. So taking those baby steps with your child will help them get to hopefully chewing and swallowing a big bite. So when they get to whatever step you're working towards, you want to be extremely reinforcing and praise and go crazy with happiness to show them that they did well on reaching that step. So again, you want to celebrate the small steps and work up your way to the big steps. What we do is usually use 3 to 4 items on a plate. You can use one item that the child has already eaten previously or seems to like, and then 3 new food items. So you're giving them the choice to pick their item, which can be reinforcing to your kiddo. You always want to give them the choice so they don't feel like it's a forced choice for them. So when making your food board for your kiddo, you should cater it to their likes and current favorite items or current favorite things. So like if they like Paw Patrol, you can make it Paw Patrol themed. Mm-hmm. If they like Legos, you can make it Lego themed. Whatever you think your child will like, you can put on here, and that should be reinforcing to them. So they'll like to play with it, which also goes into saying that you have board pieces and game pieces. I'm using Lego ones. And as Brooke will hold it up for me, you would start with taking your board piece and setting it, let's say, on touch it. So this is the step that you want your kiddo to get to. And then you would take your game piece and you pretty much go step to step to whichever one. There are some times when your kid might want to just jump right in and go to licking it. That's completely fine. Let your kid start at whatever step they want because you don't want to hold them back. If they're willing to just go right into taking a bite, that's great. Praise and so much happiness for them. Okay, let's see. And I want to reiterate that you should be reinforcing and praise them for their work because every little small step matters. Okay, so another good question we got were, what food should I introduce first? This kind of goes back to what I said before. You want to introduce foods first that they've had success with in the past, or foods that are already in the repertoire. Okay. And then another question we received was, how should I handle problem behavior during meal times? This is a big one, as a lot of kids will show problem behaviors and increase in problem behaviors once you start having a consistent schedule. It's bound to happen due to learned behavior and behaviors such as avoidance or escape during meal times and during times of eating food. So you got to stick to your guns and keeping consistent with your routine. Also, you can plan on ignoring and redirecting of the problem behavior. Often when problem behaviors are ignored, they often decrease in frequency or disappear completely. Problem behaviors often occur to escape from eating. So treatments that begin with the use of small steps, such as the food board, which I just talked about, have been shown to help limit the crying and avoidance behaviors to a minimum and it might cease altogether. So in conclusion, you want to praise and reward appropriate eating behaviors and ignore the problem behaviors. Okay. And now I will let you take over, Danielle.
All right. Another question that we received from you was how can you tell if a child doesn't like a texture or food? Which this is a good question because, sometimes when you're introducing new foods or showing new foods and they don't really want to eat it, You might be stumbling with the idea like, okay, maybe they really just don't like this food, maybe they don't prefer it, or is this a behavior, or are they just trying to simply escape from getting out of it? Because escape avoidance is, like Brooke and Jessica said, is the most common behavior that you'll see with food, is them trying to escape to get out of it because they don't want to eat it. So one important thing that you can do, like we touched on, is the food log. It's important. So if you have your food log and you're collecting data, you can start to see patterns like, okay, maybe, they tried the carrot on Monday, and then on Tuesday or Wednesday, they didn't try the carrot, but on Thursday that they did. And you can kind of look at these patterns and start to see like, okay, are they trying the food and having it, or are they not ever trying this food at all? And that might kind of indicate to you that it could be a textural thing. Like we all have our preferences and things that we don't like to eat. Like I know for myself, for example, I don't like the texture or the flavor of tuna fish. So it doesn't matter how many times I'm gonna try it, if I lick it, if I kiss it, if I taste it, you give it to me different ways, I'm not gonna like that flavor, that texture. So that's just not a preference for mine. But the thing is, that's key that we've kind of reiterated through this question and answer is like, you want to be consistent. You can't just give up with them after 1 or 2 tries and just be like, okay, like they don't like this texture. Research does show that if you have the child try for, I believe it's 15 to 20 times before they can actually establish a preference and know that if they're going to like it or not. So it is time consuming, and we understand that it's time consuming and that it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort on your part. But in the long run, all that effort now will be like such a great reward when they're trying new foods and trying new things. And then after that 15 or 20 times, if they're still not wanting to try it, you might have to look at it as, okay, maybe this isn't a preferred food. Maybe it is a texture thing. They might not like soft foods or crunchy foods. And it could simply be that, and trying to determine whether or not it's a sensory issue. And if it's a sensory issue versus a problem behavior, then we would have to look at other steps to take and introduce to help with the feeding. And our last question that we got was how to get toddlers to consistently feed themselves, which is another really good question. So what you want to do is you want to take baby steps. You don't just want to yell and be like, oh, you have to eat with like your fork tonight. What you want to do is start by having them, tell them that they can take 1 or 2 bites, and then use that reinforcer, that motivator that they want. Maybe the motivator is like dessert at the end. So they take 1 or 2 bites with their fork, and then they get the dessert. And then the next day you can increase the amount of bites. You say, okay, you have to take 3 bites. And then you get the dessert. It doesn't have to be, like Brooke had mentioned, it doesn't have to be a food item. It could be a tangible item. It could be that they get up to leave the table. Maybe that's motivating for them and reinforcing that, okay, I take these 2 bites with my fork. I feed myself independently, then I get to get up. So you gotta try to figure out what those preferences are that you can use in the moment. And preferences might change every day. That does happen. They're not gonna have a consistent preference all the time. So they might change. So that's what you want to do. You want to start with baby steps, like let them have 1 or 2 bites, and then you give them the reinforcer, and then you kind of go up from there and then work your way up to them hopefully eating independently and sitting at the dinner table with you. And another important thing to just kind of tie into that and that brings up is you need to be the model for your child and model that correct behavior. So when it's mealtime and you're sitting down, it's important that everyone's sitting down together as a family. And we understand that schedules can sometimes get crazy and hectic, but it's important that you're all sitting together and that you're modeling that correct behavior that you want your child to engage in. So you want to be using your fork and using your utensils the right way and sitting down and eating the foods and whatever you're eating. Like never expect them to eat something you're not eating or that you find yucky. Because if you're talking about it and saying, oh, that's gross, that's yucky, like they're probably not going to want to eat it. So that's important to do that and just, be consistent. Like as we mentioned, consistency is key. Like have a set schedule, like have a time that you can eat every day and limit like your snacks and your meal times to like certain times. All right, well, I think that was all the main questions that we got from everybody with our feedback. So what I'm going to do is in the chat at the bottom, I'm going to type in our email down here so you can see it in case you have any questions or any other follow-up questions that you might want to ask us individually, we can answer them for you. It's admin@behaviorplace.com. And then I'll just put our website on here as well, so you can check us out and see what the Behavior Place is about and get to know ABA a little more. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and I hope that you enjoy our session.